I want to tell a little story about John. I'll make this quick, but I was at a networking event over in Danville at Drive, and I think it might have been after a 1MC. And I was talking to some people on one end of the room, and I heard this boisterous laughter. And I looked up and I saw Denny Hummer and John laughing hysterically. And I said to myself at the time, I want what they're having. And so I went over, made my way over a little later, introduced myself, and asked if we could get together sometime and talk business. So we set a date, went to a restaurant, and sat down, and I expected to talk business. We spent maybe 5 minutes sharing some business stories, and then we started telling personal stories, and we spent the rest of lunch talking about our personal experiences. And by the end of the lunch, I was nearly in tears hearing John's story, but I was really inspired by John's enthusiasm and his tenacity and so forth. So I want to just give you 10 words that I think describe John, and then I'll let him do the rest, tell the rest of the story. But John is a husband, a father, a family man, a storyteller, a connector, a listener, a creator, a voice, a friend, and a survivor. And with that, I'll let John tell the rest of the story.
Isn't that enough? Can't we just take his word for it? Thank you, Len, and a credit to 1 Million Cups. I came to a few of these events, and I never for 1 minute thought that I'd be on the other end of this. I never. Natalie, of course, she would push me over it. You know, she would push me into it for sure. But I never thought I'd be here. But here I am, and I want to talk to you about. I want to talk about cancer, and I'm pretty sure, I'm not going to ask everyone to raise your hand, but I'm pretty sure most people in this room can say that they've had some interaction with cancer in some way. So I want to talk about cancer, and better still, I want to change the conversation surrounding cancer. That's what I want to do. That's the crux of it, if I'm honest. So the survivor's journey, and you'll see there our nifty little logo now. Go. Oh, there we go. So this, it's a tough picture for me to take. That's me. Sorry. That's me. My wife took that picture when I was not feeling my best. So I want to help everyone change the conversation of cancer. That's what I want to do. My name is John Yoder, and I am a thriving survivor. And the first step of my grand journey began in August of 2014 with a bit of hip pain, through many tests, many tons of worry, and the honest care of the finest human beings on the planet. I was diagnosed with multiple myeloma. Now, that's a cancer of the blood cells in the bone marrow. And it became my new life partner. And it manifested itself for me in lesions in my hip, my sternum, my skull, my spine. It compromised my immune system and weakened the integrity of my bones, among some other complications. I took a year off the fight. So in 2015, the summer of 2015, in March, I had a bone marrow transplant and was declared remission on July the 10th of 2015. So this is going to be tough for me too. Some of the people who saved my life so that I continue to walk this journey and be pushed to do what I'm doing today. Some of those people and are in this room today. My wife, my mother, my brother, they're all here in support of me. And I know my niece is on the line because I saw her phone up there. So, and they're here to support me and all of my fellow survivors. So what we're doing, what we're looking at, the survivor's journey is a shared experience. That's essentially what we do. And how are we going to do that? We want to accomplish a long-term positive outlook for all survivors by sharing our experiences with a greater community. Together, we will work to illuminate the path with compassion and our unique understanding. And unique for us because it's survivor-driven. This is driven by survivors. Using the collective strength of our existing community, we intend to bring not only survivors, but everyone that supports them to the same conversation table. We want to move from less pity in conversations, because let's face it, when you hear that from somebody, you get, to more hope. That's what I want. And I want that to start immediately. So I want people, when they're first diagnosed and you say something to them, it's positive. It's a hopeful comment rather than, oh, sorry. And this is how we're going to do that. Our shared experience starts with empowering survivors through positive dialogue and meaningful connections. And we will make a difference in that way. Challenge conventional conversations with open and honest dialogue about each survivor's journey. We will make that change. Build a community for survivors to make a lasting difference for whatever comes next for that survivor. And we will improve their journey. So, who's on this journey with us? So, obviously, we're going to include survivors, family members, friends, healthcare professionals across all disciplines, because as I've discovered, it affects many disciplines when you're first diagnosed. They send you around to almost every department to make sure that the rest of you can handle it. Support organizations and agencies, national, state, and local. I have American Cancer Society, the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, Multiple Myeloma Foundation I have listed up there. Whoever we need support from or who will support us. Employers and other collaborative groups, chambers of commerce, local government entities, the community at large. And employers and the other groups are on here. They're included here because survivorship is a growing employment healthcare concern. A very good friend of mine who's in the healthcare industry, who's an executive in the healthcare industry, told me specifically, healthcare agrees that survivorship is a critical issue. We just don't know how to address it. The effects of cancer are felt in many ways by many people. Employer groups are confronted with increased insurance costs, production interruptions, workforce morale, all those things, plus more. We aren't proposing to solve any of this in its entirety. No, only help everyone understand what's happening and foster that long-term positive outlook for the survivor and the whole of the community. Okay, so what's on this journey? So the survivor's journey is going to look at a few things. So we're going to talk about survivor stories, personal narratives, and it begins with me because it's really easy to do, and I could talk for days about me. Sadly, ask my family. I'm surprised they're here today. They've heard this story a million times. Stories from families and friends, interviews from experts, guest contributors, carers, healthcare professionals, insurance professionals. We want everyone to have a seat at the table, everyone, because everyone's involved. It has to be us as a community. It has to be us as a village, or it's not going to work. Supportive resources. I have guidance from mental health, nutrition, exercise professionals, and all the other rest of the community. Travel, finance, educational content, discussion on cancer types, treatment, and coping with cancer. Guidance to life after cancer. Once you become a survivor, what happens? We want to talk about those. They're conversations that no one's talking about. I mean, they're small conversations between 2 or 4 people, or your family, or whatever it is. But I want to raise that level of conversation to a community level. So guidance, life after cancer, emphasis on ongoing mental health and physical well-being, and cancer support or career support after that. I myself am being coached by a clinical psychologist in the psycho-oncology department because it's been my experience that mental health is a key factor in almost any journey, and cancer survivors most especially. It's a critical component for this positive outcome that the survivor is aware, present, and involved in the journey. All right. So what we take on this journey. Podcasts. My good friend Mark Burke is going to help me out with this. He's been a key driver, and I thank him profusely for his guidance and his help. But I'm gonna be at the Podatorium, and that's where we're gonna do this. We're gonna sit down and we're gonna do these podcasts at the Podatorium. So that's the first step. That's the springboard to the rest of this for me. I have the website, thanks to my good friend Len Presetta, who's been an absolute amazing to work with. Social media, we'll get on as many platforms as we can. Events, webinars, workshops, engagements for groups. I've been invited to briefly speak to an employer group on survivorship. One of my friends he's a plant manager, and several of his folks were diagnosed recently. And he asked me to just come and talk to them over lunch. So that's what I will do. Collaborative with healthcare institutions, researchers, patient advocacy groups, insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, everybody. And then just as important is advocacy for changes that have a positive impact on survivors and families. And that could mean legislatively, that could be in our community, that could mean policies that chambers put in place, those kinds of things. And through all these platforms, conversations and exchanges, if someone somewhere is inspired to do something better or feel differently about the world or help another's journey in some way, or even inspired to create or invent something not thought of before, then we will have the impact we've hoped for. All this creates the community we are building, and that's where we go from here. So, how does the journey start? So, like all grand journeys, even the well-planned ones, we have some bumps and some fog in the road ahead of us. The compass gets a little shaky to start, because that's kind of where we're at this point. So, I'd like to find some way markers from this community. Just to give you a little background, I'm forming a nonprofit to do this. And complete with the board of directors. We're going to trademark the logo. We're contracting with our good friends at Mindset to do a lot of this already. So these are the three things that we're looking at. I would like to know, creating awareness, engagement with survivors. You've heard some of my suggestions and some of the things that I'm doing. The engagement with survivors and others who will answer the call. Reaching the key demographic is a primary concern for us. My partners' engagement, strategic and community collaborations, you've heard some of those already. Is there anyone I'm missing? Because I want to invite everyone to the table. And also fundraising some strategies and sustainable funding models. We do have a funder, a potential funder now that seems to be very strong. Seems to be very strong. So hopefully that will work out. But it's not sustainable. We have to keep moving. So I have to look for those ongoing, improve the model in that way. And this is me now, having a beer in a pub in England as a survivor. My contact information is here. I want to thank you all for your attention, and I especially want to thank Len, and I especially want to thank Mark, and my family, of course, for coming out to support me today, because they didn't look at me crazy when I decided to do this. And a real quick story is, I've been talking about, as I said to Mark, I've been talking about doing podcasting for a long time about this very subject, but as Mark is fond of saying, 90% of podcasts have less than 10 listeners. So I've been talking about it for a long time, well over, 2 years, something like that. I've been talking about it. And I talk a lot, as you can hear. So my kids, for my birthday, got me a microphone. And my daughter especially said, "Put your money where your mouth is, big fella. You're talking about it for too long. So here's a microphone. Do something." And then the more I thought about it, the more I thought, well, thanks for calling me out. But I don't want people to come to my basement, even though I have a nice basement. I don't want doctors and survivors to have to come to my basement and talk to me over this. So, what better environment than to get a hold of Mark Burke? And Mark has been wonderful through this whole process. And so that's where this kind of idea started. And it started with the podcasting, excuse me, and then it went from there. So I gave you, if you want me to go back to the three, and my contact information is here. If anyone has anything they want to share with me after, certainly do that. Thank you.
of 1 Million Cups events is, after the presentation from an entrepreneur, feedback, advice, encouragement, questions from all attendees. And what I have here, this is provided by Mindset, and especially for the video that John will be able to reflect on later, and so he can hear what kind of questions and feedback our audience provides, as well as people who are joining us via Zoom. This is very helpful. So let me extend the invitation. Who would like to start with some feedback, and especially responding to what John has expressed about what's next, what he needs?
That's always dangerous. Hi, John. So I want to ask this question, and this oftentimes comes across wrong when we ask it, but I want to say, why a nonprofit and not a social enterprise? I think that you recognize an opportunity to do good with something that you have to offer. And I don't know that it necessarily needs to be a not-for-profit business.
Right, that's a good question. And it started out, my thinking process went through that. But as I started to talk to primarily a funder, it was pointed out to me that your funding avenues are improved. So as you know, Candy, doing these things, there's a cost to. There's a cost to the Podatorium. There's a cost to social media. There's a cost to all of that, and that's where it comes in. So it was recommended to me. It was advised that I consider it. And then after talking to an attorney, after talking to an accountant, they did the same thing. If I'm going to accept money from a funder, because I'm not independently wealthy. I don't have the Yoder Foundation, which can do this sort of thing. So that's the primary reason, is that so I can function ongoing, and without, and doing that in a better way, so that I can affect a wider community. The funder who we have in mind, excuse me, has said there are funds out there that are given, especially for survivors. And they don't know what to do with them, because survivorship programs are limited. And I'll tell you this, before COVID, they had full survivorship programs where they had a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and they had mental health aides, and everyone had kind of a group session, where they did that sort of thing. They haven't had anything since I've been treated or anything like that. They have had nothing. So that has gone. So we want to affect that in some way, and this is a way that they don't have to do it, but they can support us doing it. And it's not just one funder or two. This can be taken widely. Where these models that we're starting that can do this, in San Antonio, they can do it in Juneau. They can do these things. So I have no problem doing that, but it's a bigger wave than that. So that's the other reason why.
And I think that why I ask is I think about how many nonprofits there are that exist, and that, everyone's kind of fighting for the same pot of money.
Yes.
And a lot of what they're looking at are partnerships with nonprofits. And are there established nonprofits that exist that you can come be like, I know that you guys are working on cancer research. I really want to focus on the cancer survivors. Are there ways for us to partner? And then you don't have to do the heavy lift that is the nonprofit, and and everything that comes with it, with the board and the reporting and the kind of keeping you in your lane, right, of what it is that you're really focused on.
Right. But I see this more as the bridge that does that. That's what I see this. My view on this is we're collectively going to put everyone together. There isn't, at least locally, there isn't a group that's doing that now, bringing the pharmaceutical companies together, the insurance folks together, the healthcare people together. The survivors are standing here going, let's all talk.
Yeah.
There's no group that's actually doing that at this point here locally, and from my research anyway, and that is from from somebody high up at Geisinger as well. Several people at Geisinger high up. There's not that survivorship-driven community.
And I'll add, I think it's a great conversation, Kendi, and I I think one of the things John and I talked about early on and then started getting feedback on was where would he have the most flexibility in terms of total ownership of the experience? And there was some thought about as a going specifically with any other organization, of course, that organization has their own red tape, their own process that has to be included then if it's kind of run through them. And so the thought was, how do we want to mitigate that potential and really allow John to be his own and do it in his own way and have a lot of flexibility in the future? I mean, I think ultimately, it is that give and take, like you're saying, right? And so I think that was a big part, I think, of your earlier thoughts.
Yeah, it's very true.
And oh, by the way, you got a woohoo from Pat online, so Pat Sullivan.
Yeah,
who you know.
And yes, of course I know Pat, and I should thank Pat, and I know you can hear me, Pat. So thank you very much. Pat has been a great supporter of me and the project, and also he's put me in touch with the CPA. And Pat is a musician, and he is writing a song for the Survivor's Journey.
Yay, Pat!
So, I appreciate.
Pat on here.
Yeah, he sent me a kind of a snippet of it that he just did off the top of his head, and it's better than anything I could have done. It would have been a nursery rhyme for me.
Hey Pat, do you want to join in here and show us your face online and share a little bit? Because he also had a question here about recruiting positions. Hey Pat.
Hey, how's it going?
And I will say one other thing. Pat is a fellow survivor.
Yeah, I had ALL when I was a kid, which is weird because I don't really remember all the pain from it, but of the impact that it had on my family. And so that was kind of weird. So I have this like resonating guilt that I've had forever and ever. I'm like, why do I deserve to be here? So it was really easy for John and I to connect about this as well. So I appreciate everything you're doing, John, and I think you got the energy to make this work too. So kudos to you. And I did have a question, just because I'm running into the same issue as well with the nonprofit I'm working on for sustainability of our actions. My question is, are you currently recruiting for any open positions to help sustain your activities? Or is it just you right now?
Well, that's good. It's actually funny you mentioned that, Pat. I was probably going to call you because you're on speed dial along with Mark and Len. So yes, the answer is yes. I am. The answer is yes, because it can't be me. I have a job full time, and if you haven't known, I'm a commercial lender for Northumberland National Bank, and I need that full time job. So I am doing that. Yes. In fact, I'm going to help. Mark has helped me with some social media contact, some other things. Len has been a great supporter of all the efforts, but yes, I am absolutely looking for recruiters. I'm actually currently filling the board. if I'm filling the board of directors for the nonprofit at this point. And one of the things that I'm going to do unique to us is have a survivorship officer on the board, and that survivorship officer is going to be responsible for all content. To review all content that has to do with survivors, and that's simply going to be their role, is to review everything that has a survivor attached to it. They will review that articles, and I should say that doing this and talking about this has afforded me some great opportunities. And Pat, I think you know about these already. You'll see my face on TV. Geisinger has asked me to do a commercial for them for survivorship. So I'll be doing that in the first quarter. They've also asked me to sit on a panel, a medical panel for them, and they've also asked me to write a story, to write an article for their medical publication. So we're doing some things, we're moving, but I am tired. So Pat, you're right. So listen, you're here till June, is that right? Well, listen, yeah. You can work remotely. We'll negotiate that with you. Because he's moving. Pat's moving away. Sadly, he'll be moving away to Rochester, right?
Yeah, I could be on the moon right now, and we could still be working together. So
yeah, that's true. Yeah, you're not leaving me that easily, Pat. You're not leaving me that easy. So yes, I am.
Bob Garrett from the Chamber. I guess this is a little bit of a drill in and a very thinly disguised question that I'm really looking for some free consulting. So I'll just ask it. Started earlier this year doing sort of kind of podcasts with the chamber. That created great blood pressure problems for me because I've always been told I have a voice and face for radio, and now all of a sudden they put a camera in front of me. I'm like, oh man, I know how to talk, but I don't know how to. There's nothing I can do with this hairdo. But anyhow, let's get to the question. My question has to do with the backdrop. You're going to be using the Poditorium, and will you be using virtual backdrops to sort of like put you in the oncology ward? Will you be doing some things with talking to people that maybe things didn't go as well and a different backdrop or something like that? I'm just wondering what's going to be behind you because it's been my discovery that what's behind you really affects what people are hearing you say.
Yeah, no, it's a good question, Bob. To be honest with you, Mark and I have talked about this. So we absolutely. So it depends on who we're talking with. So if Mark and I have already talked about this. If we're talking to, I have a commitment from an oncologist already to come and visit with us, and a CRNP, the PA that took care of me. So they're going to come. So we'll have some sort of a medical background to that when we talk to them, and we'll change it to different things. As Mark can, we the chameleon screen he's got behind him. We can change that to whoever. So it depends on the content that we're doing that week that episode. But we will change it. Yeah, absolutely. But one thing it'll always be germane to whoever's on the content for that, but it'll be positive. We want to keep things light and Mark, if you've never sat through one of Mark's podcasts, if you've never been there for one, get there. If you haven't been there, do it. I highly recommend it.
And I'll add a little bit too. So for those who don't know, like some of the episodes, we talked about some of the episodes. It's really important to bring a live audience together. And so that's going to be key to John creating community. So one, the Poditorium allows him to bring a community together, which is really why we created that space, right? For folks like John who wanted to bring community together. And then the episodes that are more studio driven, then we can have that flexibility to create kind of the look and feel as John needs. But when you're live and you have people in front of you, that's the focus, right? It's about interaction. So the podcast auditorium will just be that space.
Hi, John.
Yes.
So one of my questions for you, I understand you're in the very early stages of forming this organization. So I guess my question for you would be, what if you had to identify like your singular goal for 2024 with launching this and getting it off the ground, aside from the physical, like pulling the board together and getting established as a nonprofit, what would that be? Like, what do you hope to achieve just in this first year of building this organization?
Well, I want to get a good foundation, if I'm honest. That's the key for me, is to get a good system of engagement, is to get the word out as much as I can, because that will build from there. The project will go from there. I believe that once we get the word out, confidently, over the first 6-8 months, I think many things will come after that. I think we'll have a grasp on funding. We'll have a grasp on how to measure things better. But its engagement at some point is probably the first thing. That's why it's kind of the first thing on the list is engagement. I've spoken to the folks at the oncology department, and I was treated at Geisinger, so everyone knows I was absolutely treated at Geisinger, and I had and it's a strange thing to say to everyone, but I had a wonderful journey, and it's because of the folks at Geisinger. And I'm going to get emotional again, so I apologize for that. But the nurses there, and my family will tell you, they were with me the whole time. Well, most of the time. I snuck up for secret treatments when they weren't looking, just to see the nurses. But engagement. So I've spoken to the folks at the oncology department, and Mark and I have talked about, getting a QR code, that's easy to do. You get a QR code, and then as you're sitting there for treatment, you get your phone out and you do that. That's one method of getting, kind of the engagement process started for people. Putting the QR code or the website, when I get it up and running, put that out there. There are ways of engagement but I'm just trying to figure that out. But that would be my primary, because I think all of it will come after that. I think I have a very good source of funding on a short-term basis that'll at least sustain it for within a year, within 12 months. That's where I'm at. So I'm going to do that, and then hopefully engagement will come. Once I get the word out, one of the things that I did through my journey, and again I could talk for days, is when I was first diagnosed, I told everybody. I went to Facebook. It's going to sound very strange, but I went to Facebook and told and built a community that way. And I probably annoyed my wife because everyone was contacting her, 100 times a day. How is he? What's going on? Tell me this. So almost every step of the way, everybody on Facebook knew what was going on with me. And so everyone who reached out, I said, if you want to know what's going on, check Facebook. Because you're at a different point in your life when you're confronted with that information. You're confronted with the news, and so you're just at a different point in your life where you want to keep those connections, but you can't figure out how. And that was my litmus test to building a community. Since I built that personal community, and we called it Team Yoder, and there were thousands of people all over the place in different countries that were there supporting me. We did wristbands. My brother bought wristbands, and we sent them out. I sent them all over the world. We had friends in different countries, so we sent them all over. So those kinds have helped. But then that was my litmus test. So I think that will come. I think once we get the engagement part down, I think hopefully the rest of it will come. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
John, I think it'd be worth talking a little bit about why the larger organization, right? Because when you first started talking to me, you were like, hey, I want to do a podcast. Mm-hmm. And then we started diving into, but does that give you really the full impact that you want to have? Because I think it would be interesting for people to hear how you thought through, I think I'm going to create that larger organization, and then does that affect my sustainability? Because, I think ultimately what you were saying, like, I don't want to just get funding for a podcast. I want to get funding and sustainable funding for the larger cause. And I don't know, maybe just share some thought process behind that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was, I was pushed, I was reluctantly pushed in this direction because I can affect change and I can help people. And I have a big mouth. And that's where the direction I'm going in. And so when I first decided to talk to, well, you two know it's true. Steve, I've known for years. We've sat on a bunch of boards together and everything. I see him roll his eyes when I start talking. I know Steve, it's all right. And we're still good friends. So every time, I started with this concept, and so when I talk to people, it just grows. It just grows. So when I first talked to Mark, it just grew. The idea went, you could do so much, I could do so much more. And Mark never said to me, you could do so much more. He just asked the right questions. And then I talked to Len Presetta, and then it grew into, I'm suddenly a global powerhouse, and I haven't even started everything yet. I haven't even put pen to paper, but I want to affect the larger community, and I absolutely want to change the conversation around cancer. I'm going to tell you this story. And my wife is in the room, and she hates it when I tell this story, just so you know. So when I was first diagnosed, and if you want a true test, if you want some therapy for yourself, write a goodbye letter to your family. If you want some therapy for yourself, go ahead and do it. If you can, it's a challenge. Write it to your kids. Write it to your mother. Tell your grandmother that you've got cancer, right? Anyway, when I was first diagnosed, I had to tell my wife and my kids, and it was a good day. It was a good day. So for the first month after my diagnosis, my wife couldn't even look at me because all the conversations in her family from cancer have resulted in bad things. Every one. everyone, without exception. So she automatically, that's the way she went. And I get that, because that's what happens. That's life. That's how it is now. And that was one of the things that moved me to do better, is that I can't, and that's not me, you know. So what we did do is, in that instance, we asked my doctor if he'd have some time to talk to my wife, and he said absolutely. But he knocked off 2 hours of his afternoon, blocked out 2 hours of his afternoon, and we talked. And my wife tried to get me to eat more fish that day, and the doctor said he can eat whatever he damn well wants. I'm sorry, I'm cursing on him, because that's what he said. Because that's exactly what Dr. Gorak said. He can eat whatever he well wants. That's what he said. Because he's going to have a rough fight in front of him. If you want to eat a gallon of ice cream, John, do it. You remember that's what he said? That's what he said. And she just kept saying, so what I hear is you should eat more fish. Nope. So at any rate, so during my treatments, and you'll laugh at this, and Len has heard this story, and so has Mark. During my treatments, I was getting the treatments, and they came with me. They'll tell you, I would get up from my chair and go and help people because they were sick. And the nurses finally said to me, you know, you're sick too. You saw the picture of me. She said, you're sick too. I said, no, I'm not. I said, I'm here to help. I'm here to help. And it's over now. Well, it's not over now. I'm in remission, but I'm here to help. And the larger community is what I need to do. After I was first diagnosed, I contacted a few organizations to become a counselor, a survivor counselor. It did not work out because they didn't have a program, for survivors to train survivors. So I did it on my own, and it was just a shared experience. So I talked to enough people, and they knew, because I established my community. I had a friends of mine call me and say, my friend was just diagnosed. Can he talk to you? His mother was diagnosed. Can he talk to you? Can she talk to you now because the husband is not so good? Yeah, absolutely. So after 2 years after I was declared remission, I spoke to about 16 people, 18 people total. And sadly, I've lost a few of those. We've lost a few of those to this awful disease. But that resonated with me, and I still do a little bit of that. When someone calls, I never refuse their call, to answer, to talk to them about cancer and about survivorship and my experience. And so what I want to do is to elevate the conversation. I want survivors to be okay talking about whatever's going on with their body, in their head, with their family, whatever it is. That's what I want to happen, because it's happening on an individual basis. My family has heard my angst for far too long. But it's happening on those individual, but it's not happening at a village level, at a community level, and that's what I want to do. And if I have, and since it's been recommended to me to do it a certain way, the nonprofit, build your community, do it this way, that's the way I'm going to do it, because I think it's best. And so that's where it started. It started kind of, I could affect just a couple of people here, or I could affect a wider community. Because I did a little research, Mark has, Len has, did a little research, and there really isn't that much out there for survivors that's outside the scientific aspect of things, or the treatment aspect of things, or it's very good at that. After that, there's nothing. Steve, yeah, sorry.
John, thanks again for sharing your story. Towards reaching a broader audience, especially online, do you have role models out there who are also telling their story of being a survivor? I have one who comes to mind, who's a prolific YouTube celebrity, author, Hank Green. Has a lot of online fame, and I've seen him speak recently. He had a diagnosis of Hodgkin's lymphoma about a year and a half ago, is now in remission, and throughout that, shared his story in real time through a pretty remarkable platform that he has on YouTube and across social media. So as an example, someone who's sharing their story of surviving, do you have others out there, like, if I could reach an audience like them, do you have examples out there that you're looking to?
I can, yes. Yeah. I've contacted a number of survivors that I've had contact with through their time, and some of them are ongoing now, and I could very well incorporate that, and I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great idea to incorporate that into, and I'll tell you this story, and Mr. Green does, he went and he showed everybody his journey, right? Is that, and had I thought about it at the time, I would have documented more. But I went to Facebook and did what I did. But I had a friend of mine who I counseled. She was diagnosed with breast cancer, and the first time she was going through everything, she decided to keep it all quiet. And so then she got to me. She reached out to me, and she said, and she was absent on Facebook, absent from a lot of things. So she reached out to me and she said, you inspired me to do this and this. And I'm not bragging about any of this. Trust me, when I say me, I'm sorry, but that's the way that the story my experience is. So she reached out and she said, you inspired me with telling everyone. And how did that work out for you? I said, it was, if I'm honest, it was the only thing that saved me. Telling people was the only thing that saved me. Because how would they know? How would they know? So she said, I'm going to do it. So she had her second bout, and she went and told everyone. She said, to the world, here I am. And I have this triple negative breast cancer. Not good. Even though she was doing well, she went to the world. And 2 months after that, she met up with me and she said, it's the best thing I ever did, is to tell everybody my story. It's because the support I got was incredible. And that's not really why we are doing it, but we are, because that's what we need. We need that support. And if it's a survivor going through it, telling their story, that's what we want right there. There's your community. You listen to it. You listen to Green. You listen to Hank Green. You're part of the community. Thank you, Steve. That's what we want. Absolutely. And I wonder if I could get him. I wonder if I could get him to come on and guest. Where's he out of? Markle.
I'm not sure where he's based out of, but he tours the country right now. Interestingly, what he's doing is he's developed a stand-up comedy routine.
Oh, right.
About his story.
Yeah.
And so towards your goal of bringing positivity.
Yes.
I encourage you, connect with him,
awesome.
or just look at what he's doing. I'll send you some of my favorite stuff that I've enjoyed and learned from him.
Yeah.
He's a really cool guy.
Yeah, wonderful. I would be happy to do that. I'd be happy to do that. My mother is encouraging me to write a book about all my experiences, and I did write some of them down because some of them were just too funny not to tell. Especially when I flashed everyone, didn't have to. But apparently, you don't need to take off your trousers for a PET scan, and who knew, right? You just can't have any metal on. So I was like, well, all right. Well, you don't have a zipper on your underwear, do you? No, you can leave those on. Oh, great, thanks. Thanks very much. And I did it in front of the mirror, which is the tech behind the screen. The mirror sits here, tech is there. I went like that. It wasn't good.
He's featuring other comedians as well.
Oh, right. I got some good ones.
Hi, John.
Hi.
So my question is, when it comes to getting the community together, have you thought about how it would look for adults versus children who have cancer? Because we all know that kids understand things completely differently than we do as adults. So have you put any thought into how that would look, talking to the children versus the adults?
Absolutely, yeah. And one of the reasons that came about is because I am talking to this psycho-oncologist, and it's different. And this doctor does, they're not telling me that I'm doing anything wrong or anything like that, because really all I'm doing is sharing my experiences. But I did not have that. Pat Sullivan had that, and so folks like having Pat Sullivan on to talk specifically about what he went through in his childhood to those children who are now going through it is probably a big connector. So, we're as I said to you, we're working with mental health professionals because yes, that conversation is different, and getting people like, actually my wife, she deals with 5-year-olds every day. She's a teacher at St. Cyril's, and she's very good at what she does. She has to come home and deal with this 5-year-old, so it's not so good for her. She doesn't get a break at all. So, but those kinds of people having those conversations, like she could coach me into talking to a 5-year. Listen, we raised 2 kids, but I certainly didn't talk to them like they were 5 years old. That's why they left the house as soon as they could, But yes, the conversation is absolutely different, and that changes the dynamic of every, the podcasts or even the tone of if we're writing about it or if we're doing something, that will absolutely change it. Just as if they're later in life that they're a survivor later in life, that changes the conversation a little bit as well, So, but the point of all of this is that everyone is at the table and we're talking about what to do to help all survivors, or perhaps it's just this survivor at the table now that's telling her story. That's what we're doing, yeah.
Well, we are nearing the close of our 1 Million Cups program. Let me join in and thank John for sharing your story.
Oh, thank you. Thank you all.